I believe wholeheartedly in my heart, everybody is psychic. I believe it is a natural gift that's just been shut off. And I really find alignment is reflected when you go out into the world and speak to people. We have literally billions of timelines pulsing through us. Right now on Earth, there's never been more energy in the quantum realm. There's never been more people connected. And so with that comes so much infinite opportunity that life is continuously malleable. We really get to choose the timelines that we want. And that all depends on our current present state. When we forget who we are and we forget that we're infinite, we are nothing but a concrete and solidified energy of fear. Every single soul, every human on Earth has a very unique essence to them. So it's really about finding the source within you that gives you that voice or that intuition. When you can anchor and figure that out, you are guided beyond control. So the more we guide from within, it's starting to project this holographic world that we're wanting to see. We're living from a limited perspective because we're conditioned and programmed beyond belief in this matrix, in this world. Society is going to try and create everything they can to feel like they have control, but the truth is we don't. A lot of people are from the future, and that's what Spirit said to me. When I first started like studying spirituality, like the old way was very much like you have your contracts, you have this linear path where you meet these people, luckily you meet this person, you marry them, you have kids, and then you kind of go back to source. It's like a very linear path. And so when I first embarked on this, I was like, okay, there's just one singular path. This is just the way it is. It's already planned out for me. But I kept evolving and changing and dying and rebirthing into new people and new interests 24/7. And so I started to dive into that concept and really tune in and feel that's not true to me. And through psychic work and doing readings with hundreds of people, if not thousands, I have understood that we have literally billions of timelines pulsing through us. And what that essentially means is that right now on Earth, there's never been more energy in the quantum realm. There's never been more people connected. And so with that comes so much infinite opportunity. So essentially, we are able to choose multiple different timelines. Like I genuinely always say that you could book a flight and move country tomorrow if you wanted to and shift the whole trajectory of your life. But what we're kind of taught is this confined, okay, it's just this one path and it's just this one way. But truthfully, just for my own way of living, I have really anchored and understood that life is continuously malleable. There is nothing solidified or concrete. We really get to choose the timelines that we want. And that all depends on our current present state. So we can shift timelines infinitely. There was a timeline like a week ago where, like, let's say you were feeling sad and you were sitting in bed and just everything kind of felt sloppy and you're kind of going down this like spiral of your thoughts and just feeling like sorry for yourself and in this victim consciousness. Immediately you can just choose I'm shifting now because it's all frequency, and then like choose to go to the gym or choose to like read a book or do something, and then your whole week is a different timeline, right? So we can look at it in minuscule timelines or like big life catastrophic events of the way we want to altercate. And that is very interesting because my psychic readings, my guides told me to start doing them. When I began, it was really just telling people their future and just seeing the one timeline. But as I started to connect with more and more people every day, what I started to realize was I need to give them the readings for what they're doing in their life currently that's going to shift them onto their highest timeline. Because a lot of people aren't actually anchored in that purest, highest timeline. But if you give them the tools and what they need for their own energy and their own body and their own soul, what's very unique to them, that's going to altercate them. So that's what I'm very fascinated about is that we get to choose that from this current moment, essentially. Mhm.
It's really fascinating as well feeling into your work around timelines, going a little bit deeper because there are multiple timelines. Some are more expanded than others, and you
Yeah.
set the intention. I love the way you describe it, um, to find the most expanded timeline. Can you
Mhm.
expand upon the most expanded timeline? Am I allowed to ask that question that way? Anyway, I just did. Yeah.
Yeah, of course, and I like that you said expanded because I used to always say the highest timeline, right? And when we think of highest, we really go out of the body. We're thinking like up in the clouds, like really high up, and it never felt anchored in the body. It never felt like I could feel it. Whereas expanded, how spirit has shown me, it's like a chess game, right? So it's like from a higher level, all is perfect. It's all even, right? When we think of a chessboard, it's all even. But we have our kings, we have our knights, we have our pawns. We get to choose what player we are on that chessboard. So essentially, all timelines are not, I wouldn't say equal, but they're all from a higher level equal. But when you're on the playing field, you get to choose what player you want to be. So there's like infinite timelines or like checkers on that board, right? So when we get to choose the most expanded timeline, even by stating that, like literally saying that, our words are so powerful because everything is just a frequency. So if we say like, I want to be in my expanded timeline or in my expanded state, I do believe spirit goes, okay, I've heard the call. I'm going to help them. I'm going to like send the information or the flow of energy, or sometimes it's a vision on a life that you're wanting to create, or it's wanting to change something in your reality, a vision, a feeling, a thought, a sign, a message from somebody else. When we imply like what we want to play as, like a knight, a pawn, whatever it is, you're really altercating and setting that energy to that new reality. Because I see this world like, if you even think of like today, 8 billion people have had different realities, right? So we can altercate any reality we want by just choosing in this present moment. And through like really stepping into our most expanded timeline, I believe that is the most supported energetically than anything else. Like on earth right now, I feel we are so infinitely supported when we choose to expand into our nature, because we're in a world of people who have forgotten who they are. And so the more people remember who they are, the more they are really supported by source, right? They're really supported by the earth. They're really supported by the energies, because God forbid, when we forget who we are and we forget that we're infinite, we are nothing but a concrete and solidified energy of fear, right? So the more we can really just remember who we are and stretch that capacity, naturally you're moving into that most expanded timeline, I believe.
Yeah, and there's this connotations around the timelines as you're describing them of all I hear, but I hear a lot of opportunity and a lot of responsibility for choice as well as like on both
Mhm.
sides. Like there's just opportunities all around you, and it all comes with choice, as you've
Yeah.
alluded to. Is there anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, that's actually such a good uh thing to say, because I myself have been overwhelmed. Like we've never had more opportunity in this world. We've never had much, like literally you can go on Amazon and order anything or order food to your house. Like it's crazy how fast everything is. Like dating apps, like everything is just on our screens, right? And so what I feel is, in order for people to kind of like get out of their head, because sometimes it can sound overwhelming, is I really came to this understanding that like if we choose to be the truth of who we are, naturally we're on the most authentic timeline. Like we don't have to be anything but who we truly are, which is our truth. Like let's say someone's wanting to meet their partner, it's not by them like altercating who they are. It's going, well, who would I be if I was my most truthful self? Naturally you're going to move it energetically into a person that matches that, right? So it's like I really encourage people to just really get close on who they are and their truth, and then also ask your body if that feels expansive or contractive, because I know many years ago I thought what my truth was actually just embedded in trauma. It was embedded in all this fear, so I thought what was true was actually not. So really ask yourself, does it feel expanded? Does it feel explosive, even in a good way? And then follow that path. Hmm.
Because I think that does it was only inevitable that we're gonna end up here finding our true selves. There's
Yeah.
a how do we go about that? How do we venture into it? I can hear what you're sharing about contraction and expansion,
Hmm.
but what you just shared was also I think the distortion is there are so many
Hmm.
distortions on our field, and like you said, we can think that we're building, a house on solid ground when really it's on the shaky grounds of our own traumas.
Yeah.
And sometimes we don't even know that we're doing that until it's like things start to
Yeah.
topple over actually.
Yeah.
um,
True.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. Your insights
Um,
on finding our true selves.
I feel like it's a unique blueprint. So every single soul, every human on earth has a very unique essence to them. So it's not really going to be guided through copying someone else or seeing what someone else is, but it's a journey of your inner world. And for me myself, it was just following that circumference within that guidance system. So some people, I believe everyone has an intuition. We're extremely intuitive beings. We just kind of suppress and block that through food, through music, through all the stimulations of the world. But if we can follow our inner circumference and just let that, it's almost like we're not meant to know the path. We're not meant to know the end goal of how does our truth look, right? We're always told like have that vision and then visualize it. But I don't necessarily believe that if you've no idea where to start or who you can be or how you can become. Because sometimes, in my opinion, what actually happens and who you become is far more greater than your mind can conceptualize, because your mind's very limited on who you think you can be, but you could be way more. So what I encourage people to do is just follow that inner call, that inner sign towards things. So it's like if someone laid me out a map and was like, oh, this is all the things you're going to have to do to get to your true self, I would have been like, I'm checking out. Like that's too much work. That's too much stuff, right? Like I'd be like repulsed by all that. I'd be like, that feels like years. I want it now. Whereas when you just let go of what it's going to look like, how it's going to happen, and you just follow the map, that map, one day I was guided to this thing. The next day I was guided to this thing. Like for example, one day I was meditating and I had this download. I love cacao, which is like the chocolate bean for anyone knowing. It's like a ceremonial plant that opens your heart. And I was meditating one day when I was living in Ireland, and I heard this voice saying, like, go do a training on your cacao training. And so I just booked that. I went the next week to a training, and then I fell so in love with the medicine and I opened my heart to it. This woman trained in Guatemala. That was my sign to move to Guatemala. And so I moved there, and it followed all these things that I met people in Guatemala that stretched me in my circumference. So, like, all that started from that one moment. So, it's really about finding the source within you that gives you that voice or that intuition. So, for some people, it's dancing. For some people, it's meditating. Some people, it's singing. Some people, it's painting, drawing. Some people, it's walking. Like, it's very unique to each person. And that's just the role we have to play of finding out what that is, if it's yoga. But once you do kind of anchor in how that works. And for some people, it could be a vision. Some people it could be hearing. Some people it's signs. Some people it's feeling. It's not like uh, the same for everyone. But when you can anchor and figure that out, you are guided, like beyond control. Like we're always guided, but it's if we listen. So it's really just about people really anchoring in how they can be guided and really allowing that path to then unfold, because it's all emanating and being created from you, like through you. So the more we guide from within, it's starting to project this holographic world that we're wanting to see.
Is that what took you to Ireland back in the day when you just went full monk mode and locked yourself in a room and just became a total recluse?
No, I actually lived in Canada for a year, and then something told me to go back to Ireland, and that's when my psychic gift started going really intensely. So I had to like retreat for a while. Like kind of what your background with the purple lights is. I just would shut my blinds, put those lights on, the LED lights, and just like meditate all day, every day. I didn't see a single soul. And that was what I needed at the time. And now I look back and that was a great, like, it was a great time. It was a time that like exploded me into my psychic gifts and exploded me into peace and solitude and really not needing anything external. It was a beautiful time. But if you were to tell me to do that now, I'd be like, no, because that version of me has died. Right. So we're constantly evolving and we're constantly changing. And I think that's the beauty of it, is we're always moving like trees, like nature.
And
Mhm.
you experienced so filling into your work, I always feel like intention plays a like it just invites me back into intention is what I should say. Even just feeling into you setting the intention to open up your third eye and what that did for you as you were tuning into certain things and you know,
Mhm.
or we can talk about amethysts and how profound they are. I'm a Virgo baby, so obviously amethysts are connected to Virgo. So there's a lot of fascination in around that. But maybe I should let
Yeah.
you share the story and the power of intention and how just
Yeah.
commanding your third eye to do things did things. And I'll stop
Yeah,
talking
of
there.
course. I feel like every time I share it, it's different because there was so many different things that happened. But to put it like simply, I think it's so wild because a few months before I didn't believe in psychics. I thought it was all BS. Like I literally thought it was all not real and fake. I remember someone was telling me they were going to a psychic and I was like rolling my eyes just to show the conversion can happen so rapidly and quickly. So to be gentle with people who don't believe, you know? But essentially, I went home and I really started to become extremely intuitive. Like before I even set the intention to open my third eye, like I was really rapidly, what I like to call activating my light body. A lot of emotions were coming up from my past, from memories of when I was 4, 3, 2, 5, like all these emotions. And it was really me making space for the psychic channel that wanted to come in. So one day I had this thought of I really want to open my third eye. And so I lay down, I listened to these frequencies and I put this amethyst on my third eye and I lay down for a while and I was meditating. And all of a sudden, I remember it so clearly. I got this like purple electric shock. It was like lightning had sprung. And I remember opening my eyes and being like, it was there lightning around? And so I Googled like what that meant, and not knowing third eye was like a purple color, right? I didn't know that at the time. So that like freaked me out. And I was like, oh my God. And then I got kind of like excited and addicted and being like, okay, I'm gonna like cave away, because I was newly self-employed. So I was just like, I'm gonna use all my time for this. Like this is all I'm gonna do. So every minute of every day I was shutting my eyes and I was connecting, and I started seeing visions of my future, and a version of me that at the time I was so scared of stepping into. They were showing me these visions, and I started getting really connected to angels. My stepmom gave me a book about a week after I'd been doing this work about angels, which was very ironic. And so I read that, and immediately I just believed. I was just like, oh, this is real. This feels like home, the angelic frequency. And so what started to happen was one day I was typing, I was writing at the time, channeled writing, and this white light came behind me and just started typing. And all these words started coming up on the screen. It was like I went into trance and all these words started coming through. Essentially, I can't remember which one, I think it was Archangel Raphael or Gabriel, I think it was Raphael, came to me and was like, go to your bookshelf and check page like 14. I don't know what page it was. This book. So I went to this random book and I opened page and it said Archangel Raphael and was like shining right back at me. And so at that time I was like, oh my God, there's another side. Like at the time I saw it as like another side. Now I'm like, it's all the same. But at the time I was like, there's another world coexisting. And this was profound for me because my whole life I was an atheist. I was raised in Ireland. I was raised in a Christian church. We had to go to church every day in school. There was like, Jesus up on a cross in every window. Like I was very afraid of all this stuff because of that conditioning. Um, and so when I really understood that that presence was around, I just went ham and started connecting. And then what started to happen when I went out into the streets is I was able to see people's auras. I was able to see the pain in their body and like where it was in their organs. I was able to see the chakras that were blocked. And it was honestly quite overwhelming because I was looking around, seeing everyone in their, I don't want to say darkness, but the pain that was moving through them at all times. So it was definitely a year of integration and groundedness. And now it's more at a balanced state where I can see the light and the dark. But it's really been a profound, beautiful journey. And I believe wholeheartedly in my heart, everybody is psychic. I believe it is a natural gift that's just been shut off. I see it as like, I've always seen it. Spirit shows me like veins, like millions of veins coming out of us, or antennas that connect to energy and tell us yes or no frequency. And a lot of us just shut down those receptors. But I believe we can reawaken them and reopen them at any moment through processes, work, different types of modalities to offer that gift for people because we're all immensely psychic.
Hey there, guys. We're just about to go even deeper with Ella Ringrose, and I just wanted to ask for a quick favor. You are obviously loving these episodes here on the Inspired Evolution, and if I can ask for you to please take a moment to hit subscribe to the channel. I know you've just started listening to the episode, so it's a bit of a presumptive ask, but many of you that are tuning in actually are tuning in to your fourth or fifth episode and haven't yet hit subscribed. And I just want to let you know that everything you see around here is powered and empowered by your subscription. The channel is growing, the guests are growing, the platform's growing. Everything that we're trying to do here is managed to be accomplished thanks to your subscription. So all it takes is a quick sec for you to hit subscribe, and it helps so much with everything that we're doing. Thank you so much in advance. Back to today's episode. There are more and more people waking up, and there are more and more people waking up to, when I use the word ESP, people kind of go, oh, here we go. but it is just extrasensory, like beyond their five senses.
Yeah.
They're starting to really dial into their intuition. And,
Mhm.
and maybe that is a question that maybe can get answered through the rest of the podcast. But I think more pertinent to that question at the moment is the pains and the distortions that you see. You've done thousands of readings for a lot of people now. Is there some commonality to the bedrock of where a lot of people's pains and distortions come from? Is there yeah?
Yeah, I feel from what I've noticed, I wouldn't even say it's a pain because I do see everyone has wounding. I don't even like that word, but we all have different traumas from different things, right? So that is quite unique. But at the end of the day, it is all correlated to love and like, do we feel worthy of receiving enough love? But what I've noticed from all my readings, a very collective thread is that we don't give ourselves enough permission to thrive. Like we don't give ourselves enough permission to shine and to be brighter and bigger. It's almost like we what I've noticed is there's a pain body in the mind. It's like very like a constraint. It's almost like they're showing me an image right now of kind of like an entity or an energy just like pushing your brain as short small as it can be, like your compressed pain, right? And what it is it's like we have such a limited perception of who we can be and what we can create. It's almost like we limit ourselves to how much joy we can actually experience, because if you look at children, they are nothing but an abundance of children, or of joy. You have children, right? So it's like they have an abundance of that joy. They feel so worthy of flowing through that, right? And that is what I feel correlated to new earth. It's really joy. And so our brains shut down, and our minds shut down how much joy and pleasure we can experience. And that is through the systems, that's through all the way the world is kind of correlated. It's to be proper, it's to shut down who we are and fit in a mold and in a system, right? So it's like, of course, that's been around us, but that's, in my opinion, the biggest block and pain I've seen. Because when I tune into like people's guides, they just want them to have parties. Like they literally want them to like go here and do this and this. And like I get so excited doing these readings and I'm like, oh my God, you can do all these things. Like their guides want them to like have a party every day, them to thrive. It's not like which an old paradigm I used to have of my guides is that they were these really serious beings and they were very like, proper. And like when I went to the church when I was younger, it's all this. No, they're hilarious. They're tricksters. They're very comedic. Like I believe God, a source, is a comedian. I find that through laughter. I even subscribe. A lot of my people's guides have been telling them to like carve out like 30 minutes a day to watch like Impractical Jokers, to watch like comedy things on YouTube. I'm serious. And I've been telling it to my friends and they're like, Ella, this is changing my life, because it's giving time for you to laughter and bring back to what the meaning of life is. It's not serious. Of course, our mind can make us serious, but it really is something I'm noticing is being subscribed in modality is more things that can bring joy, more things that can bring laughter in a person's life, more color. And I feel that's been the biggest blockage or pain body in the collective, is the suppression of the, I don't even want to say inner child, because it's just our human selves, and the more we can bring those receptors out, the more expanded our body naturally is to tap in and to feel more and to collectively experience all ourselves onely. So yeah.
Even even being on the spiritual path, like you end up you like there's a certain point where you end up a bit. I don't want to say wisdom makes you fuddy duddy, but there is this like projection on wisdom to be fuddy duddy. I should probably say it like that,
Yeah.
right? It's like when I'll
Yeah.
be wise, I'll be in like these loafers and slippers and walking around just like you know,
Yeah.
and it's just and it's yeah, it's I don't think that's it. Your thoughts?
That's literally the most incredible thing I could hear, because I have a funny story to say about this, because I yeah, I fell into that role of trying to be spiritual, and I was like, I remember going to these festivals and like thinking, okay, I'm a light worker, I have to listen to people. So like I would just go around to these people festivals and just like sit there and listen to their life stories. They dump on me. I was exhausted and I was like, okay, next person, a next person. I was just like being this light for people, and I was like, this is what I have to do. Like just be this light. I just became what I call like kind of good girl syndrome. I felt like I had to be this really holy Mary, like good girl, which is definitely a part of me. There's like that Christ energy, but it was almost like I had to be this role, and so I had to act this way and be this very spiritual. And then one day, I sat in a ceremony, like a plant ceremony, and she was like, "You are absolutely livid with anger." She's like, "You are so angry because you've let this narrative drop in when you're frustrated by how much you have to listen to people. You're frustrated with all these things, the way you have to be nice and let people walk all over you, because I let people literally stomp all over me." So what I started to understand was like it was taking and taxing so much energy for me to be what I thought I had to be. Right. Instead of just being who I naturally am, which is a human. I'm not a soul. I am a soul, but we're humans. So it was really fascinating because it was like a year of me like really rewiring and clearing those old beliefs that I had to be this like angelic, perfect person. I don't know what that quote is, but it's like, if you think you're enlightened, spend a week with your family. When I spend a week with my family, I'm like, I'm weird. Like I'm like a brat, I'm like a little girl, So it's like really understanding that this idea that we're just one type of hat with that spiritual side is very real for a lot of people, but we are multidimensional beings. It was like, I remember when I've always had this pattern. I'd say people do too, of like, okay, if I do yoga, I'm a yoga teacher, right? And then like you get drawn to other things. You're like, no, but I'm a yoga teacher. This is my identity. I'm like cut the identities. You are a million different things, a million different projects. We can't like identify to one things. At one point I loved angels and thought, okay, I'm an angel healer. That is who I am. And then I started getting drawn into like shamanism. And I was like, no, 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 but I'm an angel. It was like not letting, and I think that is something we have as society, is like trying to be something. It's like we're so obsessed with how we're perceived. And I think social media has a play because it's there's only so much we can show and express there. So we think, well, if we show the good side here, we have to show that like in life. But we're multidimensional beings. And I think this idea of spiritual, I laugh. I don't even know what that means anymore. Like when people are like, oh, you're very spiritual. I'm like, I'm just human. Like, you know what I mean? And
Mm.
I think that's like the journey is like whatever feels true to you. And if it feels taxing, it's not fully in alignment with your truth, because that was the most draining experience in my life when I was trying to be this spiritual person, and what I thought I had to be, essentially. So that's an incredible question.
Alignment is one of my favorite words, and you describe that there's a click that happens when someone is actually in
Yeah.
alignment, when their soul. Um, I wanna ask about the click, if I may.
Yeah.
What are the signs, sensations, and how do you tell me more about the click that happens and what that feels like, because I think a lot of us are waiting for that click to happen.
Yeah, that's an incredible question. It makes me laugh because, um, the first thing, like, my guides have always said to me, my higher self is like, "It's easy. It should be easy. It should feel easy." But saying that, I also wanna share another, little thing is I remember one point, like, I was so into alignment that I thought if anything was hard, it was not in alignment. So I was literally sitting on my couch being like, no, no, this isn't alignment anymore. This is difficult. Or when I wanted to do YouTube, I was like, oh, this is just too much. And it's like, we have to understand what the word alignment is. It doesn't mean that everything is just going to be easy. There's actually going to be challenges and hurdles, and that's the grit that we want. But for me, alignment is really knowing your truth and honoring that, and being that no matter what society is telling you to be, no matter what, if your family don't accept it, no matter if people down the street stare at you because you're dressed funny, if alignment for you is fully being in who you are, and it does feel like a click. It feels the most closest place to home is how I can describe it. So in your heart, it will feel like home. It will feel like, oh, I've arrived. I am who I'm meant to be. It doesn't mean necessarily that, although I do believe the universe source, it does lead out a path. It's a very more flow. Like I would consider myself a very lucky person, and I encourage everyone to call themselves a lucky person. The amount of luck that I have in it every single day is just beyond me. And I believe that is when we are fully anchored with our truth. Even like last week, for example, our plane had an emergency landing in Toronto. So I had to land in Toronto. And then my guides told me, you were actually meant to go here because I used to live there. And I wanted to go into town to get some herbs for, because I'm really into like herbalism. And I got an Uber, and my Uber driver was a herbalist. So he gave me like a full list of all the herbs. And I was like, oh, there you go. Like, this is just like normal to me. I could write a book at all my encounters. And then when I had my flight later that day, and Spirit told me to upgrade my flight, like something in my body just told me to upgrade my flight. So I did. And then I sit down, I look at this woman, and she looked like me in like 60 years. Like I literally felt like I was looking at my mirror. Something told me to talk to her. So I started chatting. Turns out she's a shaman. We were talking about ayahuasca. She's an angel healer, a Reiki master. All of this sitting up in first class. She's just beside me. Like we had this whole conversation all day. I could literally write a book on all these encounters, but this is like a normal part of my day every single day. Like it's not even weird to me or surprising. I always say to Spirit, nothing surprises me anymore. It's very hard to surprise me because every day is in alignment every day. And I really find alignment is reflected when you go out into the world and speak to people. It's sometimes hard to find if you're in alignment if you're sitting in your room all day. But when you go out, you realize, holy crap, I'm in a vibration here. There's a frequency going here. I'm guided here. And the more you have that reflected to you, the more you start to trust yourself. So I really encourage people to just believe they are in alignment right now, and the things that are not resonant will fall off like a tree. That the leaves will fall off if they're not meant to be there any longer. So I encourage people to anchor that in. I'm just getting a vision, I don't know why this is, of like someone who, let's say, is an alcoholic, or they smoke cigarettes, and they're like, well, I'm not in alignment right now. I smoke cigarettes. I do this. If you tell yourself right now, I am in alignment, the moment you pick that up, you're going to look at this and really reflect, is this a part of my core value? Is this really a part of who I am? So Spirit is just saying right now, like to encourage people to say right now they are in alignment, to anchor that in now in that timeline, so that then they're guided on the path to alignment.
What I'm hearing in that is inside out And so own it first, and yeah, watch the sort of repercussions come from you setting the intention from the inside out. Yeah?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly that, it's beautiful, and know you have a team around you helping you. You've source around you.
This is one of the things that is always really fun to tune in around your work, which is like your guides are just like, "Go you!" Like they just every time I feel into your work, it's just like, "Oh yeah, my guides are epic." Like they just
Oh, I love
touch wood, they just want me to win. Like, because it can feel like, there's so many
it.
meanderings on the path, let's put it that way, and then it's just every time I've tuned back into one of your videos, it's like, hey, your guides, hey. It just feels, can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, they're very strict on me. I wouldn't say strict on me, like, I don't like I like to think I have a choice, but I have no choice in the matter whatsoever. Like, I was living in Costa Rica and Bali and Guatemala this year, and Spirit was like, "You have to go back to Ireland." Of course, my human self is like, "No, I don't want to go home." It's cold and whatever, but Spirit was like, "You have to." And when I get that call, it's almost like they don't leave me alone till I do it, but it's from love. And one thing I do also feel is my guides are me. There's no disconnection in the spirit realm. So I see my higher self as my guides because I remember asking them, going, I feel really disempowered because my guides are always giving me answers. It's almost like I have to ask something outside of myself. And they showed me this beautiful image of like sacred geometry, and that like up here is your higher self, here's your guides. It's all connected in the one snowflake. So what I really understood was from a higher level, it's like my higher self with the chess pieces, right? And they're all connected, and they're just holographic out as humans, because truthfully they're just orbs of light, right? Like some of them show me as wizards, I've seen them as fairies, I've seen them as like Celtic shamans. Like I see my guides in very physical form, but they don't actually look like that. It's like they're this holographic light, a projector, and they choose what they're projecting out, and then you see the projector light. But it is all an extension of the source, so it's all connected to you. So, for some people, they say they like to connect to God or source. Some people, it's their guides. I like to just connect to it all because I know it's all connected, and it's whatever feels like the light in me. But yeah, my guides are very guiding. But at the same time, I believe that is the case for everyone. And the reason I say that is because for so many years in my life, I was so self-deprecating and I was really hard on myself. I didn't feel I had anyone cheering me on. You know what I mean? Like I didn't feel I had any support when I was a teenager and I was struggling in school and I was dropping out of school because I was failing everything and I had no friends. I remember realizing when I finally anchored into to my team and I started connecting to them, I realized it's just a matter of us plugging that plug in and then realizing we have that support, and it's realizing that we have that narrative, because my whole life I definitely didn't have that until I connected in with them, and now I realize like I feel I'm always supported, I'm always loved. So it's really just a matter of people connecting into their own guides, because from connecting in with so many people's guides and their higher selves, they literally want nothing but the best for them. Like it's actually comical to me that we think that we deserve less. It's like comical to me that we even have a self-deprecating thought, because I've so intimately understood hundreds of people's guides to the point of realizing they want nothing but the best for you. Like nothing but the best for you. They want you to be happy and thrive. They see it from a higher perspective. So sometimes what might be atrocity to you is actually a blessing in the higher realm, because it's putting you into this adversity of a lesson. Maybe you need to learn forgiveness or love or something at a deeper level, because, not all our lessons come from niceness or like pleasure. But at the higher part, they are really around everyone. And when I sit down and connect with people, they're all around them. They're back, like holding them up and supporting and loving them. It's just us opening the floodgates to feeling that. And I think that's why it was a very pivotal part of my journey, when I was going into psychic work, was clearing out my pain body to open my light body, because what was blocking that love was my pain. So the more I felt it and I experienced it, I went through like a crying purge of just crying and feeling. The more that like all emptied out of my body, the more I could actually feel that it was always there. So we always have spiritual, energetic support. It's just that we're blocked and armored from it. So the more we start to connect and feel, the more we're going to allow ourselves to feel that it's actually all around us all the time. Yeah, I just look at nature, it's all there. Mhm.
Yeah, I a question that I find struggling to reconcile is, on one level, when you get super 7D about it, it's like it's all love, apparently. So it's like it's all
Yeah.
love, and then but all of our sort of maladaptive tendencies come from the lack of love or the seeking of
Mhm.
love. Can you help me
Yeah.
reconcile those two things?
This is you asked the you're literally thinking what I'm thinking as well. So this is a really good thing, and I actually battled with this for a long time. So with the chakra systems, I learned this from a mentor of mine, and when she said it, it was like so profound for me. She was said after the solar plexus, you move from me to we. So the heart is we. When you're plugged into the heart, you're plugged into unity. Yeah. So what I struggled with is for so long I was like love, love, and that's when I was really, I was healing different parts of me. I had this explosive heart awakening like 2 years ago where genuinely I felt like there was a bomb in my chest. I'd never felt more love in my life. It was like very intense. And I was walking around just like everything was love. I was like, yeah, like being so kind to people and what I have come to understand just from my own grounding journey a little bit as well is yes, the answer is love in a higher realm. And it is the key to everything. It is how we heal everything. But I also do feel that some people, myself included, when I was living in that reality that everything was love, I was allowing boundaries to be crossed, things that I didn't want to happen. Anger was being suppressed, my needs, all of these parts of me that came from like the root and the parts of the human experience were being denied. So what I've come to understand is people who sometimes anchor just fully into that loving experience, we're actually diminishing a big part of the human experience as well, which is the polarity. It's why we come here for duality. And I do believe love is the answer to all, but I believe there's so much other energies in the chakra system. Like when I think of love, it's very loving, but then when I think of joy, that feels like a completely different energy. When I think of like power and singing and screaming, that feels like a completely different energy. And yes, it is all held in love, but when we mentally believe like, oh, it's just love, we can start to control a paradigm that isn't actually in full alignment with full expression. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Um, there was a question that is inappropriate for me to ask, and so I'm gonna have to ask it. So pardon me for going there. You used to be a makeup artist,
Yeah.
yeah? And so there are 2 sides to that coin because I'm in awe of people's journeys and just how we are always the person that we were always meant to be, like, and that sort of the acorn holds the oak tree sort of thing. And you being the makeup artist, there's kind of 2 sides to that coin, right? On one hand, you're bringing out the beauty in people, yeah?
Mhm.
On the other hand, you're sort of, yeah, helping them navigate their imperfections. How do you see that particular role that you played having come full circle now with the work that you currently do?
Yeah, it's funny because I definitely see it from the lens you did, and I struggled with this for so long because I'm ridiculously not OCD, but holistic health. Like that is like a part of my soul, right? I make all my own products, and holistic health has always been a big part of my journey since I went through my awakening. So what I saw from the other paradox was like this products are so damaging for women's hormones, their bodies. It's literally just poison, in my opinion. What I was struggling with is this is so bad for people. But then on the other hand, whenever I did makeovers every day and I was chatting to people, they were just amplified and lit up, and I was so bubbly and sharing. So it's very interesting, and I've come to this inner solitude of peace because when I went into this battle of okay, it's right or wrong, left or right, black or white, right? As a society, we're very like one or the other, and it's nothing but debating. Um, I came to this inner resolution of like at one point in time that was part of my path, that was true for my soul. So I really honor all of that, but at the same time I'm so rigid with holistic health and the products women are using that I'm almost just like wanting to be an advocate for that. But I do see that there was a lot of beauty in that work that I did because I was connecting with new people, meeting with new people. What I do feel is the beauty industry is very capitalizing on this paradigm of we are not enough. It's like the root of it is you are not enough. You need all these products. You need all of this work. You need all of that. And what I've come to understand is if that messaging is what breaks my heart personally, because that is what needs to shift, especially for the younger generation. But at the same time, I find that it was a part of my soul and it was a part of expression. I love painting. I love drawing. So it was almost like a canvas for me. So and it's funny because my family are makeup artists. My auntie is a makeup artist. She's won Oscars and Grammys. And she's literally done tons of movies in Hollywood. She lives there. And, she's an extraordinarily spiritual woman and an extraordinarily artistic woman, and so I see both sides of the coin, of the spectrum, and I still haven't come to that full resolution because I'm very advocate to holistic health, but then I see this side, and I've just come to this understanding of peace. It's like nails. Women who get fake nails, I personally think it's bad for you, but then I think I've have all these clients who are nail techs, and they're loving, and they're light works, and they're just beautiful beams of light that help people. So I've just had to come to this point of I'm done fighting of what I believe is right or wrong, because it's an energy that's taxing, and I'm just coming into what lights you up. And for some people, that is nails. You know what I mean? So that's kind of where I'm at.
Thanks for answering that question and humoring me along. You mentioned the younger generations quite a bit, and you do seem to have a deep-seated passion for it. I don't say although, well, you are quite young yourself. And so in and around there, the key thing that I wanted to ask was you talk about this new earth rising, and also simultaneously this great split occurring. So yeah, those two don't necessarily have to go hand in hand, and potentially both are happening at the same time. So can you just want to give you the platform and the stage there to sort of describe in your own words what you mean by a new earth rising and potentially this great split that's currently coming our way?
Yeah, of course. So it's interesting because I think when I talk about New Earth, I've made a lot of videos about it without expressing that, it's going to take time. It's not like, oh, next year everything's just going to be in alignment and everything's great. And I have that reflection to me when I talk to people who aren't conscious, right? I go to like gatherings or things, and I connect to people, and it's just like, oh, no, like it's not even in their radar to believe what we're speaking about here. And I think back to my awakening journey, and it's like consciousness is slow in its expression. It takes time, and also, to be honest, if every human on the earth had a spiritual awakening at once, it would be an absolute chaos meltdown. Everything would go crazy, right? So I really honor that side, that we are definitely going through a massive shift in consciousness because people are consciously waking up, and spirit has always shown me that COVID lockdown was a big awakening for a lot of people. It was like a mass, people started really opening up, and there's going to be two more waves before 2030. So there's two more massive collective waves, because they always say to me that it's only like 13% of the population that need to be of some form of consciousness for the world to shift. And that is occurring. It's getting greater and bigger, and it doesn't mean, oh, they need to know about chakras and spirituality. It's really the light emanating within the being, right? It doesn't matter what we call it and mask it in religion or whatever it is. If it's emanating light, that is a grander awakening. And I believe the New Earth Rising is all about unity. It's all about connection. It's all about oneness. It's all about community. Because when we look at the earth, it's being very exploited. And the earth is our mother. She's our power. She's our anchor. She's our home. She provides for us in every single way. So New Earth for me is really a deep reverence to earth. It's a deep reverence to source. It's a deep reverence to who we want to be as a collective, as a community, because everything in the system is kind of hijacking nature. It's going against our cyclical nature. It's going against our cyclical cycle. And that kind of correlates to what you're saying, is that I believe a lot of the children coming in are anchored and encoded with that game plan. They're encoded with that. And spirit has said this to me many times, and it's going to be confusing for some people. But a lot of people are from the future. And that's what spirit said to me. It was like, you're from the future coming back to the past to help them shift with this future. And so I think when I came here to earth, is I'm so remembrance of the new earth, because I believe I've come from there. And I know that might sound very confusing for people with time and the mind, but I believe that is where the earth is at in the future. And so I've come from there, right? So I'm trying to bring them to that remembrance of what I see it as, which is community. I get visions of it all the time, of the way it looks and how it feels, and it's communal, and it's very ecoic, not egoic, like ecosystem. It's very like in alignment with all that. And they're even showing me all these symbols now. It's very in alignment. And so I believe a lot of the children are coming from there. And I've met so many. I've had clients who are literally kids remembering, and they're sitting in school going, I know why I'm here. Like, I literally know why I'm here. I remember coming here.
Hey there, guys. Quick question. So, what does a new Earth rising look like to you? What would the utopian new world? Maybe it's not utopian. Maybe I'm putting words in your mouth. I'd love to hear from you what you think the new Earth looks like in the comments below. Back to the episode.
And so even yesterday, I joined a gym because I just moved back to Ireland for a little while, and the guy showing me around was young, and he was telling me, oh, he's into angel numbers, and he's into all this, and he's noticing signs, and he's so young, and I'm noticing The younger generation, they're just so much light and they're so brightened, and it's just so important that we encourage them, because when I was in school, I felt like an alien and I felt like I was dumb and wrong because I couldn't retain information. I was dumb and stupid. I was diagnosed with dyslexia and dyspraxia. So I always felt like, oh, something's wrong with me. And so if only people were like these videos, or people were to tell them, no, you are bright, you are special, you are in your own way, like honor this, it's a gift. Because now I look back and I'm like, oh my God, that's such a gift. My mind literally shut down to school information. It would not like retain it. I see that as a gift, right? And so the one thing I'm noticing to help kids evolve even more into their power is honoring that they are perfect the way they are, that they're not broken or wrong if they feel different. Because I do see like a two timelines of them trying to fit in and then diminish their gifts and suppress it, and then maybe go on medication and different things to like bring down and block that the natural connectedness. But really, if we encourage them that it's a gift, and we really start to educate the adults of their mindset, of their way of seeing the world, that, oh, there is a gift here with my child, there's a gift, and honoring it and seeing it as a gift, right? The more we can start to encourage a safe space for them to really anchor in their power. But either way, I believe they're going to be in their power. The kids are very powerful and they're very potent. And it's just really profound for me and like humbling, because spirit always say to me, like, you're gonna have to step aside and let them guide you. And right, we have this paradigm of, respect your elders, and I believe that, and it to an extremity, but they're really showing me like these are the people you need to be teaching, because the systems, like, these are, all obeyed and we're all anchored into them, but the younger ones are trying to bring in the new frequencies, and they all have very new encoding and energy. So I know Spirit said to me, they're like, one day you're going to have to like pass the baton on and humble yourself and step aside and listen to what they have to say and not what you think is right because you've been on the planet longer, which has been such a funny thing Spirit always tell me. But that's what I believe. So yeah, it's an exciting time in that regard. I'm fascinated by the children. They blow me away. They're so hyper aware. Even the ones, who necessarily just come in like with phones, they're the most educated generation I've ever met. They're so highly acutely aware. Like, I have my cousin correcting me more than myself. She's like, that's wrong, that's wrong. I'm like, Jesus, like, where did you come from? They're so engrossed in knowledge. So I do see a bright future in that regard. The only thing I am concerned about is the middle generation of teenagers with TikTok and how that is really infiltrating their memory system, their attention span. It's really quite unnerving for me, and I do believe that that generation need us the most help and love right now, because if not, that can infiltrate them a lot. And that is a side, like, people always want it just to be the love and light and the bubbliness of the excitement, but it is a very concerning thing, I do feel. So that is something that I do think is going to need a lot of attention and weaving of love in the next 10 to 15 years.
Hi there, guys. I wanted to take a quick moment just to introduce you to my one-to-one coaching. It's something that I deeply love doing. As you can tell, conscious conversation is such a massive part of my life. And having one-to-one, deep, meaningful conversations with people where I get to show up as your brother or as the coach or as your mentor has been such a gift for me personally, and a gift for lots of the people that I have supported on the journey of living a more spiritually empowered, spiritually powered, spiritually aligned life. You don't have to take my word for it. Here's some examples of people all around the world that have experienced profound transformations through this coaching experience.
Amrit is a fantastic coach.
In a few sessions, he got to a depth that I'd only experienced before working with certain medicines.
He's gone through a lot of the struggles that you're probably facing, and Amrit's been a really strong, supportive figure in my journey.
I'm more in control of myself.
I'm kinder to myself.
I actually have that vision and a purpose.
I do feel like I'm a better version of myself already.
Amazing energy.
He was easy to talk to, which made me easy to trust him.
Working with Amrit at 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning, and really I was bouncing out of bed.
Whenever I get off the calls with Amrit, best money we've ever spent.
I would not recommend him because I don't want everyone to know about him, and then I won't be able to book him. If he gets too busy, I won't get my turn.
I would say absolutely.
There's no way you can work with Amrit for a period of time without being transformed.
So if you're considering him as a coach, do not hesitate, because you won't be disappointed.
Alrighty, so hopefully that's inspiring your evolution onwards and upwards. And if you are so inspired to evolve, you can book in a one-to-one call with me directly at www.amrit.coach/life. And guys, if I can say so myself, I do think this is something quite special. Most people that I see building things online don't really work with people this deeply, this intimately, one-on-one as things start to grow, just because it is so time intensive. And yet I'm so deeply passionate about the transformation that comes from one-to-one coaching that just isn't available anywhere else. It would be my absolute honor and a pleasure to support your spiritual awakening, your spiritual path, your spiritual unfoldment. It is my life's work. I look forward to seeing you in the call. Back to today's podcast. My work as a coach has working with lots of different people, and we liaise a lot with psychiatrists and psychologists and all that sort of stuff, because a coach is kind of forward looking, and counseling and therapy and psychiatrists and psychology is all like backwards looking, and so obviously there's an interplay between the two. And right now they're saying there's like 2-year waiting lists here in Melbourne to work, like they'll work on mental health treatments outside of ADHD, but
Yeah.
people presenting with ADHD, it's like the waiting lists are up to 2 years in some instances for certain clinics, and they're just like, our books are full for ADHD because we can't just keep taking on more people. And you start to
Yeah.
reflect on the challenges that these short attention span platforms, I don't want to blame it all on them, but at the same
Yeah.
time, like maybe there's not a causation. I don't know if there's a correlation, but it seems like an obvious place to point your finger. I'm conscious as I'm doing
Yeah.
that, as I'm saying it, but nonetheless, I just can't help but feel that way.
Yeah, it's definitely these labels of all these different, ADHD, ADD, bipolar, schizophrenia have never been stronger. And I always see everything from a spiritual lens, and I think that's just because of my work. I'm always in the other realm, so I see it from that perspective, and I see them all as gifts. I really do. I've met many people who have all of the things I just listed, and I have people so dearly and intimately close to my heart, in who have these. Like, I believe ADHD to an extremity is like, our frontal lobe shuts down after a few seconds. So like a lot of people with ADHD are falling asleep in class, they can't sit still. It's because their frontal lobe literally shuts down from absorbing the knowledge. From my spiritual perspective, I'm like, that's a gift. Like, why would we want to learn Pythagoras theorem? That's a bloody gift. Like, wow, honor that. Same with like shamans in the community. When one of the people would have schizophrenia, they would literally bow down to this person having schizophrenia. They would go, oh, a new healer has been found who can connect to other dimensions that are not here simultaneously. I see schizophrenia as that, where they're connecting to literal multiple dimensions. Because when I speak to spirit, like there's infinite realities all happening right now, and we can tap into them. There could be literally a car driving here right now in another realm. Like, it sounds very far-fetched, but it's very real. And a lot of people can tap into them and see that. And a lot of healers, or shamanic communities, they would honor this person with schizophrenia. They'd be like, oh, it's the chosen one. So I see all these things as gifts. I definitely have a very strong thread of ADD, and all my friends do. All my highly gifted friends do. And at first, I remember I met a girl, and she's like, I definitely think you have ADD. And I was like, no, all my friends are like this. Like, all my friends are processing 4 things at once. I see that and I realize it's like all my friends are like that because we're all very similar. I see these all as gifts. And I think even if it is causing you harm and difficulty and pain, how can you like transmute that into a gift and then choose to like anchor that belief it is a gift and then use that for your own good? Because I do find also when we think it's like a label and we put it, it's like I know when I got diagnosed with dyslexia, which I don't even address with anymore, I think it's a gift again. When the teachers are like, oh, she's dyslexic, I'd get put into a special class, and I was this taught specially. And so from a very young age, I remember for years I was like, oh, I'm dumb. Like, I'm really dumb. Like, I'm dumb. Like, I can't retain information. I'm stupid. I'm going to go nowhere. Whereas if at that age I was like, this is a gift, and I knew that was a gift, my whole life would have been even more different than it is now. Because I created that label because of the energy and patronization around these labels. So that's what I'm more concerned about, is like, what's the energy we're holding those labels with? Is it like, oh, you poor thing, like, I'm so sorry, this is going to really affect you? Or like, are we using it in an empowering tone? So that's where I like people to kind of make the click or the link with those labels.
Talking about the current shift that's going on, because there is so much, I guess, there's more and more entropy, there's more and more chaos happening. Do you think the addition of more and more labels and just being quicker and quicker to label things is just a symptom of us trying to grasp some modicum of greater and greater levels of control?
Yeah, I find it kind of comical, if I'm being honest. Like, I don't really attach to any labels. I used to even attach to like starseed and crystals and like rainbow children. And I'm like, they're beautiful labels, but like, we're all one. Like, we're all souls who take form. Like, if we think of like Earth Angel, I'm like, well, yeah, you're a soul. You can take form as a plant. You could take form as a rock. Like, we're souls at the core. And I do believe that. I think it's the Western world trying to like mentalize everything, like literally mentalize everything, because the spirit is kind of taking over the world. The energetics are taking over the world. So it's happening, and it's just the human evolution trying to keep up, and we're designed to try and understand things. We're designed to like find certainty in anything we can, because we're as primal beings, we are not infinite. Our soul is infinite, but our primalness isn't. So, like, there's this always certainty for understanding and developing. And I find it kind of funny a little bit. Like, I just try and find the laughter of it, because I'm like, okay, yeah, like we're trying to mentalize everything, but like the greater cause, and I see everything from a soul perspective. It's just like I'm wired that way. So when I look at it from that perspective, I'm like, oh, a gift. Like, this is just like humans, little avatar humans, like these cute humans trying to figure everything out and being like, oh, this is it. And I'm like, it's kind of cute, like we're trying to figure it out. But I do believe it is exactly what you were saying for that degree. And I just choose to see the higher perspective of it.
There's a massive invitation to surrender in there, and I feel like more and more places I'm going, and maybe it's just the nature of the work I'm up to in the world, similar to you. It's like, not saying everything is overly spiritualized, but nonetheless, it's everything has that spiritual lens to it. I find myself speaking to people from all different walks of life, and just people that I would never have considered being even like militant kind of control people, going, I'm tired of the control, like,
Oh
and
yeah.
and softening to surrender at this particular time. Is that one of the symptoms of the new earth and the shift that's happening right now, in your opinion?
Yeah. Well, the truth is we have no control. So society is going to try and create everything they can to feel like they have control, but the truth is we don't. Nature is the kingdom. And I see that spirit always shows me. Like, I recently quit caffeine, like altogether, even cacao, coffee, which was challenging, but now it's fine. But I see it as like that energy of like coffee, like discipline, like all these things, like let's get it done, and it's all kind of one big illusion. And I say that for myself because spirit has had to make me surrender again and again and again. The amount of like things I've had to let go of again and again. And I remember this one time specifically because I believe this idea that we're in control is an illusion, because we are surrendered beings naturally. Of course, there's an element of us holding our masculine and having discipline and all these sort of forms. But I'll never forget this one time, and this will correlate to a lot of people's lives. I was in Bali, and I met up with these three people. And they like saw my video and they wanted to meet up. So we all went out for dinner, and the energy at the table was like something I'd never experienced. So I was like, this is New Earth energy. It was like a remembrance of these people, of me knowing their souls and who they were. And I remember I was so moved by this feeling. It was freaking me out, because up until that point, I was still trying to figure everything out. And like, I hadn't met my tribe, I guess. So when I went home, I remember sitting down on my knees and being like, okay, there is an energy here. There is source here that is guiding things way beyond my control. I trust you more than anything right now. I said, I give you permission to F up my life. I give you permission to take everything away. Like, I literally was vocalizing this because I felt the presence of not even spirit, but creation of everything, source, God, whatever that you label that as. But I felt it. And I realized my little mind has no idea how great it can be. Like, my mind has no idea how expanded it can be. And I've been trying to like get in the way and plan it all out and how it can look, when spirit's like arranging it all in such a higher, grander scheme that I couldn't even conceptualize. And it took that experience for me to finally let go of the last strain, if you will. It was like an initiation up until that point. And I say that for people because we really do not understand. Like, if you think of like the trillions of universes, like that creational force that is holding everything, the creation of everything, like is way bigger than your mind. It's way bigger than what you can literally conceptualize. And truthfully, whenever we anchor through the brain and through the mind, we're living from a limited perspective because we're conditioned and programmed beyond belief in this matrix, in this world. So really tuning into the spirit and source is where we will learn to practice the surrender. And I do believe people are tired. Like even on Instagram, like looking at women, a lot of people are like, oh, the girl boss is dead. Like this old energy of people just being taught to overwork, to burn, it's slowly releasing, because people are like, why are we having burnout at 20 years old or 25 years old? Like, why are we burning out so young? It's because so much stimulation, so much rush, so much fastness. So I do believe it is a very pivotal part of people's journeys is that active surrender, but also knowing the fine line of surrender and doing, not feeling like you're going to sit back and just everything's going to happen. It's inspired action, it's inspired movement. Yeah.
Yeah, the inspired action piece is always one that I love to sit and meditate on. I am conscious where, just where the time is in the podcast, and there is no way you get to go away from today without highlighting to us the importance of you dance at the intersection of health in the immune system and spiritual awakening. And I find your work plays at the intersection of like holistic wellness and spiritual awakening almost interchangeably. But they are two separate fields. They are, I promise. Even though you may not believe so. So can you speak to like yeah, just how one supports the other and the other supports the other? Because I find in your work, those are one and the same thing.
Yeah. Um, it's so funny because I did a reading yesterday for this man, and Spirit was showing me this diagram, and they show me this diagram again and again. There's two ways they can show it to me, but it's like a triangle. And the top of the triangle is your health, it's your vitality. That is your key point of spirituality, in my opinion, because if we're not operating from what we're putting in our body and how we're feeling, literally everything that is extension of that triangle that's coming out of it, like, so we have this idea the pivotal is like our work or like how we just survive, right? And we have our value system completely flipped upside down, because the truth is, I remember who said it to me. They were like, well, if I gave you a million or $100 million, but you had to die tomorrow, you wouldn't take it. And that just shows how valuable your health is, right? Money can't buy health. I mean, it can, but you know what I mean? So essentially what I feel Spirit show me is like health and vitality and your well-being and your spirit is the core frontal lobe. It's the highest peak of source. And then through that triangle is love. So anchored in love. And then the extensions of that are relationships, connections, your wealth, your work, all of that. Because if we're operating life from an internal felt experience, which we all are, we're literally operating from our physical selves. If we're not operating from our highest peak of health and joy, then everything else of the extension of that is not its highest quality. So I see the world as like a spiritual experience. So it's like almost like we are the sun and everything is shining out of us. But if we're eating McDonald's every day, it's like, well, the sun can't beam that bright. You know what I mean? So it's really, I believe, up to people's value systems nowadays. Like, what do they really value? And a lot of people don't value health. They don't value things being more organic. And I get the pricing, but when it really goes back to your value system, like, are you going out drinking every weekend, or are you, doing this on the weekend? Like, what are your values? And for me, it's living an experience of life that feels good. So from there, that's why health and holistic health are like an obsession of mine. And I think something my soul just knew I had to experience because I'm really sensitive. So I don't know if it's the case for everyone, but that's my pyramid. That's what I believe is your wellness at the top. Mhm.
And so then highlight to me this shift away from caffeine that you're currently going through.
Yeah, so it's funny. I quit coffee years ago because I read a book called Caffeine Blues, and if anyone wants to quit coffee, I'm telling you right now, it's the best book you'll read. It'll terrify you. um, but I read that, and then I quit that, and I found cacao like a couple months later, and I fell in love with that, and that medicine was beyond healing for me. It helped me through grief. I was going through a lot of grief at the time, so for anyone, like, cacao held me through a lot, and I came to this point where I was really crashing at like noon. I would only have one a day, but my body was shaking immediately. I was stressed, and I started researching and studying coffee deeper and deeper, really understanding that like it wires and explodes the receptors like a drug, and that's why we think we're focused. It doesn't give us any more energy. It literally sends us into fight or flight. So we're like literally operating from this like freaked out state, which feels addicting, right? When you have a coffee and you get all these ideas and you're like, and don't get me wrong, that helped me so much at times. But what I'm starting to see is if we're wanting to get off the hamster wheel of rush, because we already have so much stimulation, I believe removing caffeine can be such a potent part. And it's not to say, oh, I'll quit coffee forever. I doubt that. I'll probably do cacao once or twice a week, but I have turmeric lattes. I make turmeric with like cinnamon and ginger and nutmeg and all of that, and raw honey. But stuff that isn't sending me into highs and then lows. Like, I'm wanting my nervous system to be neutral. And I just really weirdly see caffeine as part of the matrix. I do, if I'm being honest. Like, I see them very intertwined, of rush, of go, 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 of stress. And I see a lot of people, I actually had this thought yesterday in the supermarket, which is funny. And I feel like I need to share it is I was imagining someone in their job, right? And they're like, I physically cannot not have coffee because I'm falling asleep at my desk if I don't. So they have one in morning, one at noon, and then one in the afternoon. And if they remove the caffeine, they're probably going to be falling asleep in front of the mirror, the camera, or the computer. But for me, that highlights a bigger issue of going, well, do you enjoy this job or do you want to get out of it? Because if you're falling asleep at it and you're exhausted, then that's highlighting a bigger sign. So some people will see it from a perspective of, well, I need the caffeine and need it for my work. But for me, it's highlighting a bigger value system of like, can you create a change of a different work field that brings you joy? So I think eliminating that can be such a powerful process. There is like a detoxification process as well, because it can be really challenging for a while. You can get tired, you can feel sick, you can feel awful, depending on how much you consume. But I feel being on the other side now, and I can see it with clear eyes because it's kind of out of my system, is like, geez, it really is a drug. It really
Mm.
is an amplifier. And don't get me wrong, it's a fun one. But
Yeah.
I do think that if your soul is pulling you towards it, or you hear this and it's like, oh, I feel like I should, but I don't want to look at that, give yourself grace and patience, all
Mm.
is well. You don't have to be perfect, because I think if we try and be perfect, then we actually go the other way, like trying to be like 100% healthy and then we just binge, right? So it's finding what works for you. But that's just something Spirit advised me, was it was getting off the coffee. Also because of the oat milks. Now no one has dairy milk. They have it with oat milk or almond milk or cocoa milk. Just that alone, they're horrific for you. Like, they're so bad for you. They're just pumped with vegetable oils, which aren't even meant to be in our bodies. So I even see it from that perspective of when I went out, like, these milks aren't necessarily edible. So I saw it more from that perspective as well, not just as much as the caffeine. Yeah.
I've felt into the frequency of caffeine a couple of times myself, and yeah, there was this thing about like when we went to Peru and saw that how much they had relied on the coca leaf to build their civilization and empire at the time, and it's interesting how you're reflecting that so much of caffeine feels like it's connected to the current world matrix.
Mhm.
It just I started to feel that
Mhm.
so much so, and I think it's yeah, you put it in quite a great light. I think there is if you do you require medication in order to get through your day to day? So why the
Mhm.
medication? Do you know what I mean? Like what is actually ailing you underneath that? Are you happy with what you do and the work you love? And that's a that's a massive thread through because your videos are about many different things, Ella. But
Mhm.
this thing about doing the work you love seems to rear its head in many different places again and again and again. Can you speak to that for a little bit here?
Yeah, and I'll be honest, like, I think that in this day and age, a lot of people don't like what they do. A lot of people do as well, but, for me, I feel like my purpose is my anchor in my life. Like, even I just moved country and, I was feeling disoriented, and then I did my work and I was like, "Oh, I feel like myself again," because it genuinely brings me so much joy and pleasure. And it's one thing that my personal friends will laugh at me is I really get emotional. I even cry a lot when I see people um, doing jobs that don't fulfill their soul. And I can see it in their eyes. Like, when I was in Canada in the airport, there was this woman it was like 10 a.m. and she had to serve out shots of like whiskey because she had to sell that for her business. And I remember just like looking at her and going, it breaks my heart, because in order to sustain and live in this society, in this matrix, we have to go against our value systems and not even question that. Because I mean, maybe she loves whiskey, maybe that is part of her passion, but from what I saw, it looked like she was exhausted. She just had to do this to get along. And I genuinely cried many times in the airport, even at the plane, like looking at the food we were being served. I cried because I was just like, we're being forced as a society to do things we don't want to do to make a living in a world that we're not happy in. Right. So I really believe the frontal thing of people should be their purpose and what brings them joy. And really committing to that and what they want to do to make a change in that, because it's possible. There's never been more opportunity, and it doesn't have to be in the way they think. A lot of people think, well, I don't want to do YouTube, or I don't want to do this. There is like a million different things. Like I would rather choose to work in a farm in the countryside than work in a corporate office. And some people love the corporate office, but I really think that it is taking so much time of your life, and if you want it to be the frontal part of your experience, I really encourage you to take a reflection of what it is you want to do. And a lot of people come to me and they're like, well, I don't know what I want to do. And that's the ended question, right? It's like, well, then you're in uncharted territory if there's so much option. And what I always advise, and what Spirit advises to do, is there's never going to be just one thing. And I think that is the syndrome, is we're constantly looking for this perfect thing of like, oh, when I do it, I'll just know. Like a lot of painters might have picked it up and loved it first way, but a lot of people might have hated it for years and their mom forced them and now they love it. So a lot of people are looking for that euphoric feeling of I'll just know. I don't necessarily agree. I believe when you just tune it. Like personally, I hate doing YouTube sometimes, but I love it at the same time. I hate doing reading sometimes, but I love it at the same time. It's not going to be airy fairy. But what I encourage people to do is to follow that guidance of what they want to do and just commit and feel what it feels like and stick with it for a while. And there's so many options and spheres that you can go down. I think it's really the game. And I think that's the fun part. Like if everything was easy and just handed to you, like if you were like given a movie, right? And you just sat down in the cinema and it was every single moment of your life, like you wouldn't have no excitement, no pleasure, because you'd know everything. It's so predictable. So it's like there's kind of an excitement to it, and I love a challenge. So it's like see it like a game, see it like a challenge, see it as something that you can get excited by, high by, that you're like, okay, I'm gonna figure this out and we're gonna work at it and figure it out, So I mean, I did YouTube for 5 years before even a video went viral, So I was doing it for years and it wasn't getting any views, and I hated it at times. I resented it, but I literally forced myself. I was like, I've got to keep going because there's something deep inside me that likes it. And then from there, it worked. So it's not going to be like immediate, but just trusting that grit is also really fun. Like that challenge is also really fun. Like that, like was my favorite part, to be honest. So I think it's really just people, again, going back to their values and what they value. And a lot of people who are with consciousness and expanded awareness, that is the biggest gift, because a lot of people don't even have the awareness to question that they can change in their jobs. Like I just see a lot of people maybe in their 30s who are going to nightclubs every weekend and they're doing jobs. They don't even have this aware space in their body to question if this is what they should be doing, because it's not even an option. It's not even a part of their awareness that they can do something differently. So for the people who are more explorative and they're really like having that expanded thinking, that's such a gift, because a lot of people don't even have that space to have those thoughts. It's not even a part of their matrix of their world. So it's really about you creating your own matrix of what you want to create, and seeing the possibilities and the opportunities that can play in that. So yeah, it's a gift. It's a real gift. There's a theme here. They're all gifts. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. There's so much in there about actually finding your soul's purpose and how much it can. Yeah, for me, I find it really, people feel into me and it's like, oh, he's the engineer. And so then he ends up talking about spirituality from the lens of values, and it's super grounded and it's too grounded. But really, like values, I find just is such a great place where the rubber actually hits the road and your personality can really understand what your soul is trying to emanate through the personality in
Yeah.
this particular lifetime. It's like these are, like, I'm Indian, so I can make this joke, but the values really are the pillar. My body is a temple. It's like the pillars of the temple. I say that is you.
Yeah.
It's yeah, because
It's
mine's are like connection, contribution, and celebration. And for the longest while, while I was doing work that was like not in alignment, there was no connection, there was no contribution, there was no celebration. And then you look at podcasting and coaching, it's like all I do every day is like connect, contribute, celebrate. And it's
Mhm.
like, it could be the latest hours of the night, or sometimes waking up, like you said, sometimes you begrudge YouTube and it can be a bit of a slog. Like sometimes waking up like 3 a.m. to like podcast this person from United States. I remember the first time I got Marianne Williamson on the podcast and I was like, 3 a.m.,
Wow.
I'll do it. And then, you wake up and you're all excited and those are the challenging bits and you get really into it. But it plays into your values and you're like super,
Yeah.
super, super animated into it. So that to sort of segue into, Ella, I'd love to ask you this question about if we could just park, pardon me for how this is going to sound, but park ego aside for just a sec.
Mhm.
Um, Like, what do you think it is that you're here to do in this particular time? Why is your soul incarnate? Why are you here at this particular time, in your opinion? How would you say that?
Yeah. I don't see it as a specific thing. I genuinely mean this. I believe my soul is just here to be fully itself. In what that way is. And you know, fortunately, unfortunately, that's me walking around wearing grounding shoes and blue light blocking orange glasses and looking a bit weird and, you know, not eating anything on planes, you know, like things that people are like, what you do? You know, I'm just meant to be myself. And I think that's actually the core for a lot of people's purposes is when you are yourself, you are an expression and you're fully embodied in your expression. And naturally that just inspires people. I'm not here to actually inspire people or evolve people. I'm genuinely sharing all this because I'm so curious about it and I've spent months in my bedroom trying to figure this out too. It's really I believe that I'm just here to be that expression and that naturally will inspire people or trigger people. And that's what we're all here to be, inspire people and trigger people, you know? So to put it shortly, it feels so resonant when I tune in. It's just, I'm just here to be fully myself, to be fully who I want to be and not mentally know who I have to be, but just what feels truthful to me. And I can't go against my truth. I can't.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for honoring that question. And talking about triggering people or inspiring people, this was one of the
Yeah.
questions I had coming into today about timelines, rearing its head now, which is like there are multiple timeline opportunities that present for myself. There's multiple opportunity timelines that present for themselves. They've seemed to have collided in today's podcast, and rather gratefully so, in my opinion. Maybe you're just can't wait till this is over. But nonetheless, there are these interplay between timelines that happens. Can you describe a little bit about what's going on there? Like, are we always destined to collide and connect when it's the timing's right, or are there different opportunities? And yeah, do you get the nature of my question? Like, it's almost like the infinite quantum potentials.
Like there's infinite timelines. There's not one set in stone.
Yeah, so, like, there may be 5 opportunities for me and 7 timeline opportunities for you in any given
Oh
moment, and
yeah.
then it's like we sort of then end up interacting, in some planes we do, in some planes we don't, and it's just
Yeah.
really trippy to feel into.
Yeah, I actually I used to have OCD, and ayahuasca healed that for me overnight. I went from being a clean freak to messy, which was actually a blessing. But I'm a perfectionist at my core as well. And I believe sometimes it's best to let go of this idea that there's one perfect timeline, the most optimal, because there's actually two factors. The first one for me, it fed into, oh, like when I was raised Christian, like good or bad, you're sinning. You know, like if you're doing not perfect, you're doing something wrong and you're going to be shunned for it. Or the other one is trying to be perfect and trying to know there's this perfect timeline, and the energy of perfectionism is not our truth. It's not actually who we are because we're trying to be this something that we're not. So I think for me it was very healing to let go of this idea that there's just one line, there's one most highest timeline. Although I do believe there is a purest timeline, a most expanded timeline, but I do believe when you are fully operating from your truth, it kind of goes back to what I was saying. What is meant for you will not pass you. And we can have a million different opportunities, but are they in full alignment with what we want? Are they just shiny and pretty and flashy? Or are they truly going to be like food for us? Are they going to be nourishing for us? So I think it's a play between the two, and I don't think we need to fully understand. You know, when I was in Guatemala with my friend, we were laughing every single day for a month, like the funnest month of my entire life. And what we came to this understanding, and I noticed this around the spiritual community, is we're trying to mentally understand everything, and instead of realizing like what's going to be funny, what's going to be hilarious, what's going to be expansive, what's going to be joyful, we're like sitting around and being like, okay, how do we do this and this, and it's so serious, right? And through that the answer came of like we don't need to know, we just need to know what feels good for us. And I think that takes weight off our shoulders, because if not, we're trying to be this perfect, okay, what's the most perfect timeline, and then we're really in our mind and we're actually hijacking the frequency of our highest timeline, which is of joy. So it's like really understanding that it's not a mental game, it's like a spiritual game. So we don't need to know with the mind, we just need to move with it. So that didn't really answer your question, but it's kind of like the resolution I've come to is like I don't need to fully know, because when I thought I knew, it was driving me crazy. Yeah.
Okay, and so the prescription from today's podcast, intent is always going to be at the heart of a lot of the work that I feel into in your field. But then also it seems like we're taking away a lot of wisdom around joy. Is that a big takeaway for you to sort of promote from this podcast for others?
Yeah, I think New Earth is joy. Like, I have had tastes of it a million times over, and I just think the meaning of life is actually joy, and it's the one thing that's not resonated. And I say this because I used to go to ceremonies and retreats and workshops every weekend. I was like to my friends, I was like, "Okay, right, what workshop are we going to this weekend?" Like, all I was doing was sitting in ceremony and healing and moving through, and that had such a sacred time for me. But then I moved to the hub of these ceremonies, Guatemala, which is literally where I was living in San Marcos, which is called Hippie Town. There's ceremonies every hour of the day. And I didn't go to a single one. I haven't gone to a ceremony in over a year. And the reason being is because I felt such a disconnect of play and joy from seriousness and trying to be this like composed spiritual person. And that stuff is beautiful. I hold them as well. You know, I did for years. But what I really started to want a taste of was the joy and the play. And that was swimming in the lake and being like a fairy and like just being a joker and like laughing and watching like comedy videos and like laughing with friends and cooking. And I think that is the meaning of life, is the simplicity of the things that we already have, the pleasure of cooking, of joy, of community, of connection, of friendship. And so yeah, I do feel that I kind of pulled out of that world a little bit because I want to infuse it with something new. And I think that that is something that I think every person should strive for, is infusing and injecting more joy into their life, more humor. Like, my mom is an absolute comedic woman. She's a messer, is what Irish people say. And like, I definitely got that gene. I love joking. I love messing. I'm actually not as serious in my own life as it would come across. And I think that's something that we need as humans, is more of that celebration, more of that lightheartedness. Because if not, we would just sink in our own density of, you know, of seriousness. And that is an energy that really can dilute the spirit, because I experienced it for a long time. So I think that joy is the pivotal of New Earth. I believe it's the pivotal. And I think children are our biggest teachers with that. Sure, you know, because you have kids. Yeah.
Ella, wow. There is so much left to uncover in today's podcast, but I am conscious of where we're at in the conversation. There's things around shamanism that you share that we haven't yet unpicked and uncovered. Like, yeah, so much potential for us to connect into the simplicity of the elements, and the earth, the fire, the wind, the water, and even how you described it. There is so much, like even in the 3D and in the world, there's challenges with like even just the elements and the way they're presenting in our relationship with them, just pollution in the waterways and pollution in the air, and yet fire remains as this sort of hallowed ground for us to come back into and work with. And yet that's a whole nother podcast into and unto itself. So I will sort of allow the energy to just settle, because I think I recently had Neil Donald Walsh on the podcast, and he said he actually had a background in broadcasting. He goes, a good interviewer knows when to end and that like the mic drop has happened, and it's like a joy. How do you how do you top live your joy? You can't really. So
I love that.
on that note, there's a lot more questions to be had, and if you're up for it, maybe we can it'd be an honor to have you back on in the future. But
Absolutely.
before I jump the gun, I have to thank you for your time, your energy, your presence here today. My God. I do have 3 rapid fire questions. They're existential in their nature. So yeah, they're designed to be sort of discombobulating in that way. And I'll ask you those. So how do you define God?
Oh God, that there you go. That is the like question mark question. I think it is the source of everything. I believe God is literally the wallpaper. I believe it's literally within everything, and it's within ourselves. Yeah, it's the source of everything.
I love
Mhm.
that. What is the ultimate purpose of life, in your opinion?
Experience.
Mm.
In the dark and the good. I think it's really important to do that, to understand that, because I've gone through a lot of darkness, and that was incredible, and I see it from that perspective now. I don't believe we come here to just have this smooth sailing world. That's why it's dual. It's the only planet in the universe, in my opinion, or that I know of, that has like the consciousness of an animal all the way to like an ascended avatar, like a spiritual person. We have this huge play, so it's like a playground. So I would say experience. Yeah, 100% in all its fleshes and all its forms and all its uncomfortableness as well.
And this is not the third question, but for those that want to experience more of you, how do they find you online? Can you tell us a little bit about
Yeah.
that? And then I'll ask you the last question.
Yeah, sure. You can find me on YouTube. It's just at Ella Ringrose. I'm sure you'll link it down below. So YouTube is where you'll find me. It's where I share all my thoughts. It's where I share everything that you hear today. So yeah,
And I
thank you.
will just add a little word of caution in there. This is Ella's videos are one of those. It's I don't know if you have them everywhere else in the world, but here in Australia we call them Pringles. But they're those chips that you have one and you can't stop. So it's like you pop up in a video and you think it's like, oh wow, that was intriguing, and there's another. Oh, okay, I need to wait. Before you know it, 5 videos later, you're kind of like, oh damn it, like I'm really down the rabbit hole here, and there goes my afternoon. So I will just say that, like, make a cup of tea, get settled in. Like this is, yeah, I'm a big fan of what you're creating over there. So yeah, I
Thank
would
you.
absolutely link it into the show notes below. And actually
Thank
might even just put together a few of my favorite videos and put them, maybe 2 or 3 of them, for you guys to go check out right under the link to the
Thank
video
you.
as well. Your definition, Ella, of living a good life.
Oh God, it's weird. The first word that came to my mind was pleasure, like pleasure in cooking and nature and friends. But I think the definition of a good life, actually, it's pleasure. I see pleasure in everything. In everything. We can look at it like I have friends who don't watch movies, right? And they're like, "Oh no, that's distracting." But I'm like, I find such pleasure in movies. That's like a part of my soul, right? So is you can turn anything into a pleasure and medicine if you wanted to, like anything. So I think it's just living a pleasure-filled life. And I think that's like the energy that needs to awaken on earth, because earth is pleasure. It's feminine, it's Shakti, it's that at its nature, and that's the one thing that's deprived. So I would say pleasure in all its forms, not just what we think that means for us, but pleasure can be in everything if we choose it to be.
Another conversation for next time as well, about the feminine uprising that's happening through and the role of the masculine around all of that as well. And yeah, there's so many questions left unanswered.
Yeah.
But man, Ella, so grateful, so
Thank you.
grateful for your time, your energy, your presence, and just, yeah, today's conversation obviously stands on the shoulders of, all the work you've put into yourself.
Thank
Maybe
you.
even just beyond this lifetime and then some. So just honoring you for who you are, Sister Bear. Thank you so much for sharing
Thank you
yourself
so
so
much.
abundantly and being
Yeah.
here with us.
Thank you so much.
Inspired soul, you've made it all the way through to the end of another episode. I'm so inspired by your inspirations to evolve. Thank you so much for being so inspired to evolve. And as always, just reminding you that everything you see around here is powered and empowered by your subscription to the channel. So if you can, please do us a massive solid. Please take a moment to hit subscribe if you haven't already to the channel. Hit that bell notification icon. You'll be notified of when new episodes come out twice a week now. And on screen, you will find, to keep your inspirations flowing, to keep your evolution growing, multiple episodes. One of them is with Gabby Kovalenko, an incredible teacher in her own right, and also a crowd favorite, Teal Swan, is on screen right now if you want to go deeper. And yeah, just multiple episodes for you to be able to continue your inspirations to evolve. I will see you in the next one.